In Activity 4, The Moon Changes Shape, students observe changes in the shape of the moon and record their daily observations in a moon journal for 2 weeks. They infer from their observations that the phases of the moon repeat themselves every month. You will need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 4, Moon Journal, construction paper, roll of shelf paper, parent letter A, and masking tape. You will also need to provide pencils, boxes of crayons, chalk, marker, and a heavy-duty stapler. To prepare for Session 1, make a copy of parent letter A for each student. In order to follow the cycle of the moon's phases in the traditional order, it is important for students to begin their observations a few days after the new moon. At this point in the lunar cycle, the moon rises in the early morning and sets in the early evening. In order to collect data, each student will need a moon journal. Make these in advance using the pieces of construction paper and the moon journal sheet provided. 8 double-sided copies of this sheet, folded in half and stapled at the crease, should provide students with enough pages for 1 month of observations. Students can decorate the front of their journals. Next, hang the shelf paper where it can be seen by all students. This will be used to create a class record of the moon observations. Draw lines dividing the paper into 30 sections. The daytime portions of the observations will be made during the school day. These observations will need to begin about 2 weeks into the activity and about 3 days after the moon is full. Students will need clear views of the sky from the school grounds. All observations should take place as early in the school day as possible. To begin the activity, review what students have learned so far about the appearance of the moon, including the fact that it can be seen both during the day and at night, and also its shape. Inform students that in this activity they are going to observe the moon every day for 1 month. Explain that students will be able to observe the moon later at night from home. Distribute 1 moon journal to each student. Tell them to take their journal home each evening and draw a picture of the moon as they see it on a separate page of the journal. Each page should be labeled with the date and time of the observation. Add that students should make their observations from the same location each night. Remind students to bring their journals back to school each day. Distribute a copy of parent letter A to each student and tell students to give this letter to a parent or guardian. This letter explains how parents can help their child with this portion of the activity. Each morning, review and discuss students' journal drawings. Help students come to a consensus about how the moon appeared the previous night. In the first section of shelf paper, draw the shape of the moon based on class consensus. Be sure to date the drawing. Repeat this procedure daily for the next 2 weeks. On overcast days, consult the intranet, an almanac, calendar, or weather page from your local newspaper for the shape of the moon that day. Draw a picture of it for students to copy into their journals in order to have a complete record of the lunar cycle that month. Students may be confused as to why the moon appears to have a crescent shape when they know it is round. Assure them that the moon is indeed round, and that they will find out in a later activity why it does not always look round when they see it in the sky. As the chart begins to fill in, engage students in a discussion about their observations. Ask students, is the moon the same shape each night? Students should respond that the moon looks a little bit different each night. Then ask, how does the moon's shape seem to change? Students will provide many different answers. Help them to understand that the moon appears to be growing steadily larger and more round each night. To prepare for Session 2, students will need their moon journals. About 2 weeks after starting the activity, explain to the students that they will observe the moon in the daytime while at school. Based on their previous observations, ask students, what do you think the moon will look like today? Encourage students to base their predictions for how the moon will look on the pattern that they've already created. With their moon journals and a pencil, bring the students outdoors to a predetermined location from which they can easily observe the moon. Remind students to avoid looking at the sun and help them locate the moon. Ask students to draw how the moon appears to them, along with the date and time of the observation. Next, return to the classroom and initiate a discussion of the moon's appearance. Create a consensus drawing for the class record on the shelf paper. Encourage students to compare the drawings of their predictions on the board with their actual observations. The observations and discussion should be repeated daily over the next 2 weeks. To prepare for Session 3, make a copy of Activity Sheet 4 for each student. Students will need their moon journals and a copy of Activity Sheet 4. By now, students' moon journals should be filled with 1 month's worth of drawings. Encourage students to examine their observations. Ask students, what has happened to the moon's shape over the last 2 weeks? Students should note that the moon appears to have become smaller or less round over the last 2 weeks. Have students examine the class record for the month. Then ask, what has happened to the moon over the last month? Students should be able to understand that the moon's appearance has changed over the last month. They should be able to identify a pattern of the moon becoming more and then less round. Ask students, what do you think would happen to the shape of the moon if we were to take another month's worth of readings? Lead students to understand that the moon repeats this pattern every month. Distribute Activity Sheet 4 and crayons to each team of 2. Help students complete the sheets. Let students know that in Activity 10 they are going to learn more about this changing pattern of moon shapes. To conclude the activity, return all materials to the kit. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.